And I think everyone else is ready.
Okay, Chair, we are live now.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the September 23rd, 2022 special meeting of the Oregon Transportation Commission. We are going to hear public testimony from one commenter and then take up one item which we are all familiar with. We've talked about it the last couple of meetings. We now have a written proposal for a limited pilot project, which would include 8 projects, and the director and Assistant Director Brown will lead us through a presentation on that, followed by a decision. So with that, I will move to public comment. Sabrina.
Thank you, Chair. Mike has been added. Mike, if you would like to go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 1 minute for public comment.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. It's good to see you all again. Director Strickler, as always. I will be very brief. We submitted written testimony or comments yesterday. We did receive a copy of the letter of agreement that was reached between ODOT and the building trades and the carpenters. We've reviewed that. We have some questions and comments that we posed in the longer letter that we submitted. As always, AGC continues to consider itself or tries to position itself as a constructive player in this process, and we are available to answer or follow up on any of the questions or comments that we have raised, and we look forward to seeing what the commission does today and how we can engage with you going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for being here. All right, so move forward to the decision item, Community Workforce Agreement Pilot Project. And I'll turn the meeting over to, I'll turn to the director and the assistant director for their presentation on the item.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Chairman Brockland, thank you. I am Cooper Brown, for the record, ODOT's Assistant Director for Operations. Good to see you all again. I will provide just a few brief comments since we had a conversation in the near past on this, and then turn it over to Director Strickler, and then happy to take questions, field any questions that you may have as you all have a discussion. So as a reminder, we were talking about community workforce agreements here again today, as we did most recently last week, 10 days ago, I believe. And you've had a couple conversations about CWAs around the OTC table over the last few months. As a reminder, and I won't belabor and get back into the details of exactly what we're talking about when we say CWAs, but suffice to say they're pre-hire collective bargaining agreements that apply to projects and set forth conditions. And the reason that we're having this conversation, as I mentioned last week, is really to ensure that we are testing every tool possible out there to address our workforce challenges, as you all know, are very acute across our state. And we want to ensure that we have the tools and the workforce to deliver the projects that we have coming our way over the next few years. I think you all know that, but it bears repeating, especially on the record here as we have this conversation. And just as a quick recap again for the record, we first brought to you at the OTC table in July this conversation. And at that time, we have presented an approach that was programmatic in nature. And it involved using CWAs on projects of a certain scale and scope and a certain dollar threshold and across the state on ODOT projects. We heard from you all in that conversation in July, some discomfort with that approach and that we were probably moving too fast with the programmatic approach, and that we should probably pump the brakes a little bit and look at a approach that was more pilot in nature. So we came back to you and at that July meeting, you also directed the director to go and have conversations with key external stakeholder groups and come back and report to the commission on potential paths forward. That was the conversation that we had, last week at your commission meeting. And we talked about in that meeting, and you all discussed potential pilot projects to which we would apply CWAs. And you had a robust dialogue around what those pilots could look like, how they would be selected, what the reporting would entail if you decided to go that path and directed us to go that path, and what we would bring back to you. I think in summary, what I would say for that conversation was you all decided not to pursue the pilot approach a week ago, based in part my characterization from a lack of understanding and full understanding of what the parameters of pilot projects would look like, what would be the conditions attached to those, and what would be the reporting requirements that we would have to come back and report to you all on. So in light of that conversation, the director, and I'll turn the floor over to him here in just a second, the director has had subsequent conversations, and we have been able to come to some terms, and specifically a letter of agreement with our external union partners that lay out what I heard, and I think we all heard from you all, were some of the chief concerns that you had last week with the pilot approach. And the intent with this letter of agreement is to really give clarity and speak concretely to what those conditions would be if you so choose to direct us to go with this approach for the agreements themselves, and also what those conditions would be for us as an agency in terms of reporting back to you and when. So we can certainly get into the details of that, but maybe before I will turn the floor over to Director Strickler and let him maybe flesh out my opening comments, and then of course stand ready to answer any questions and support any dialogue you'd like to have. Director.
Thank you, Cooper. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, for the record, Chris Strickler, Director of the Oregon Department of Transportation, and thank you for the time this morning. Actually, I guess we're entering an afternoon already. I'll be even more brief than Mr. Brown was, and without going through the details, what I heard in the last conversation of the Commission was some major concerns around one, as kind of the umbrella concern, which is just allowing the agency to enter into some kind of dialogue or conversation or agreement even without knowing what the sideboards were or what potential sideboards were important to each of you as members of the Commission. We tried to listen at the last meeting, come back with, I think, some confirmation of where we could be or should be in some of the discussions and negotiations with our labor partners. And ultimately concluded that if we captured those in writing and put them in front of you, again, as a point of consideration for you, would that satisfy some of the questions that were posed, not just in the last meeting, but the meeting before? I think it's a prudent next step for the Commission to consider that as an opportunity. Now, clearly, the next steps would be the letter of agreement, would then transition into a final negotiated agreement. And if the Commission were to consider directing us to do so, we would enter into that agreement in the near term, following on the details outlined in the letter of agreement. Last thing I would say is I heard two things loud and clear in addition to the overall umbrella of a bit of a blank check approach, which I appreciate, the right oversight coming from the Commission for sure. The other two things are we adequately protecting the concerns of the contracting agency industry in this conversation? And have we brought forward a way to report back to the Commission so this isn't something that you act on in a moment and then never hear about it again, and are able to capture the data that might come from the pilot potential. So we've done our best to capture that. You see in the meeting documents the letter of agreement. It's non-binding at this point, but would turn into something binding in the future. And that's the part we have in front of you for consideration today. So with that, like I said, I'll keep my comments brief. We are happy to answer any questions, but I think before you today is the question as to whether or not this satisfies, I think, some of the issues and apparent concerns in the last discussion and the one from before, and does this provide the right boundaries for us going forward? And we would look to the Commission to say, is there an opportunity here to consider directing us, or a motion to consider directing us to move forward with this as the foundation. So with that, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you both for your comments and presentation. I guess what I'd like to do is test whether people are ready to move to a motion or would like to say anything prior to moving to a motion. Do I hear a motion? Commissioner Burke.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to say thank you to the staff for memorializing these concerns or points that we discussed at our last meeting. And I do think this is the path forward. I think doing nothing is untenable at this point. And so I'm glad that we were able to pull this together and come back so quickly. So with that said, I would move, and I don't have great moving language in front of me. So now I feel like Commissioner Brown a little while ago. And I guess the thing is that we move forward with authorize the department to move forward with negotiations of the CWA for a pilot program, taking into account and working with this letter of agreement that it has set before us today.
Is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Smith seconds. Commissioner Burke's motion. Is there discussion or any questions for staff? Commissioner Smith.
I never pass up an opportunity for discussion. You all know. I also wanted to thank staff and for taking the time to listen to our concerns and addressing them in this letter of agreement. I think I was very concerned that we didn't have a full understanding of the bookends of what this would look like. And I feel very strongly that it's my fiduciary responsibility and obligation to have appropriate policy direction for the ODOT as a commission member. And also, I'm very mindful that we have a really good relationship with our contracting community, and I don't want to jeopardize that. I was mindful that we are very focused on equity and hearing concerns from the minority contracting community that they had concerns. Those things just really, it felt to me that we needed to have a little more flesh on the bones to understand what we were agreeing or directing ODOT to do. And having read through the provisions, I think many of my concerns have been addressed. Obviously, there's still some negotiation and unknowns within this. And I think if we go forward with projects, we'll learn more as we go forward. As the evidence comes back, we'll have a better understanding. Do these really work? What are the flaws? How could we improve them? I'm generally a skeptical person, but at this point, we need to try every tool in the toolbox. And I think this is an appropriate level of let's see if it works. So I am still skeptical, but much more comfortable going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments?
Yes, Chair, for me.
Commissioner Brown?
So I want to echo what Commissioner Smith said. I think that we are at a spot where we can move forward. I want to thank Director Strickler and also the staff. Cooper, I know I've been hard on you on this topic and have asked him a lot of questions offline. to try to wrap my head around what we were doing and why we were doing it. Although I feel as though there are a few places where we still need to get information and buy-in from the contracting community outside of the labor community, and make sure that we are not doing anything that is going to jeopardize the idea of the DBEs and the small firms being able to bid on ODOT projects. And I stand firm in this. And I believe that we really need to keep an eye. And so I do like part of the provision where you are reporting back to the commission, because I think we do have responsibility to make sure that we are meeting our obligations, that we are not adding burdens to the cost of projects that are unnecessary. And if this is a tool that will make us successful and be able to build our community agreements, not agreements, but actually build the workforce in our communities, then if this works, then we've been successful. If it doesn't, I think that the conversation has led us in a direction where maybe the state of Oregon will start taking this seriously and really looking outside of just having these workforce agreements, that we'll really start thinking about how we are going to build our workforce, not only in contracting for ODOT, but in general. This is something that we need to think about across the board in the state of Oregon. So thank you for listening to us and for taking this on. I don't think that this will be the last of this discussion, but I think that we are now at a place where the commission feels like we can move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I'll just briefly add that I want to thank the director and the assistant director for the work you've done since our last meeting, really of your own initiative, although obviously we made a number of comments for you to consider and think about. But I appreciate your continuing to engage to see if you could find a path forward on the pilot concept. These 8 projects, hopefully we'll learn a lot about. And as others have already said, there are a number of things that the various of us had concerns about, depending on the issue. Actually, probably all of us had some level of wanting to have more detail on, whether it's union, non-union, open shop, retirement, and a range of benefit questions, DBE firms, et cetera. Many things that are covered in this non-binding letter agreement. So which is dated yesterday, 2 days ago, the 21st. I think that this provides a good framework and becomes our direction to you for what we are authorizing, which is this 8 project pilot program with active, regular and ongoing feedback and communication to us about how things are developing vis-a-vis these 8 projects. So thank you for bringing this back, and we appreciate it for all the reasons that all my colleagues have mentioned, and appreciate the good work. So with that, unless there are other comments, I'm ready to move to a vote. And since we're virtual, I'll do it. I'll do a roll call vote. So Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, is there any other business before the commission today? Hearing none, have a great weekend. Enjoy the sun. Great to see you all again, and take care. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.